When was the last time you would say you enjoyed listening to music? Or having a conversation with a friend? When was the last time you could say you were truly happy? Or happy about, waking up in the morning? And let me also ask you, what do Dylan Thomas, a soldier who died in World War One, the so-called last good Roman emperor, and Drake all have in common? Well, as you can imagine, it's a fairly long answer, but I do believe it's an answer worth listening to, which is why I'm making this film. Time, unconditionally, will pass you. This means you cannot stop it, nor can you rewind it. It will pass you. And secondly, the time you have is limited. And I understand this is an intense thing and very, very morbid thing to contemplate, which perhaps explains why humans so infrequently do so. But it is the truth. Time will pass you, and time is limited. Now, before I move on, I want to consider those 2 points a bit more, because you can't really truly understand the depth of those statements by simply brushing over them like that, because obviously time passes. Like, shut up, what are you talking about? But to address that point, I've been kind of losing my mind about how to perfectly try and explain this, because it's a lot harder than it seems. So I'm just going to try and do my best here, and hopefully you get the gist. I'm going to start by paraphrasing a quote from a book I've just finished. And I'm going to talk about the book a lot more later in this film, but look to the chaos of infinity, each side of the present. Right? Imagine right now is a moment in time, and on the left you have the past, on the right you have the future, right? Try as you might, you cannot go back. You cannot put yourself back in a day that happened in the past. It doesn't matter how strong you are, it doesn't matter how virtuous you are, how successful or rich, you cannot stop the sun from setting, and you cannot put yourself back in the past. It has happened, and that's where it is. Nor can you put yourself into the future. What this means is all you ever have is now. All you have is today. There is no other day that you can live. You cannot live in the future. It hasn't happened. You cannot live in the past because it's already happened. You only have today, and specifically, you only have now. The clock is ticking, time is passing, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. You will never be younger than you are today. And that's what that first point means. Sort of impermanence, I guess. The second point is, a lot more morbid of the two. And it's pretty intense, obviously, but it's also a lot more intuitive, right? Using the quote I used earlier, the second point means that out there, in the chaos of infinity of what is yet to happen, your time will finish. Essentially. And again, it is an unavoidable truth. I don't know where or when, but it's there. It's waiting for you. And yeah. Really think about those 2 points for a second. And I'm going to go into my 2 thoughts, well, what I think about those 2 things in this film. Because I've come to realize that it sort of teaches 2 seemingly paradoxical lessons. And I'm going to get into each of those lessons individually. And the first one is slow down. Gratitude. So, when was the last time you truly, genuinely felt happy? Maybe happy isn't the right word to use when talking about gratitude. How about content? When was the last time you felt content with life? Or maybe the little thing in life. What you have, who you are, and where you are in life. When was the last time you took a moment to notice if you are content with these things? And if I were to give you my definition of what gratitude is, I think it might be slightly different. I haven't checked, but gratitude, for the purpose of this film, is going to be defined as noticing, accepting, and appreciating exactly what you are experiencing in the moment, as it happens. And this can also be stretched to noticing, appreciating, and accepting exactly what you have as well. Whether that be good friends, good family, a nice car, a nice coffee, watching a sunset, watching a sunrise, enjoying a nice beer, listening to the rain fall against your window as you fall asleep, rolling your windows down on a hot summer's day in your car. Well, whatever it is. But noticing it, accepting it, and appreciating it as it happens in the moment. That's what gratitude is to me. Now, when was the last time you had a moment like that? So I got here at the beginning of September, right? And it was still really, really hot weather when I got here. and I had just finished a bunch of computer science work off for my degree, and I had a bit of time, so I went shopping. And when I was shopping, I saw a chocolate bar, and I was like, mate, I am copping that chocolate bar. And it was a boiling hot summer's day, and I finished all my work. I had a full evening of free time, basically. And on the walk back to my house, I thought I would just go for a stroll, to be honest, just to like see what's around the neighborhood, I guess. And I was just walking around, and I found this really nice park close to where I live, and I sat down on the bench, and I was like, mate, I'm gonna sit down on this bench and eat a chocolate bar, right? But I can't, like, for whatever reason, I basically, for the people who know me, you know that, like, your boy eats lots of chocolate, right? And I set myself the challenge of, like, really, like, this is why I'm going to sound crazy, but I set myself the challenge of enjoying the chocolate bar as much as I possibly could, right? And what I ended up doing was I slowed down, right? I ate it piece by piece, really enjoying the taste and the flavour and the texture. And yeah, I was just sat there the sun was going down on a nice sort of end of summer evening in Amsterdam, and I was sat down on this bench just eating this chocolate bar. That's like, yeah, this is cool. Now, what if I were to give you a chocolate bar? And hypothetically, it was the last chocolate bar you knew you were ever going to eat in your life. How would you eat it? Would you eat it 4 or 5 pieces at a time? Would you rush to it and get to the end? Would you absolutely scran it or chow down on it? Or would you, knowing it was the last chocolate bar you were ever going to have in your life, would you slow down and enjoy it piece by piece, savoring the flavor and the taste and the texture, whatever? Not to get too ASMR on you. And if you haven't noticed, that chocolate bar I just gave you is a metaphor for life. How are you going to live your life? Are you going to rush through it and get to the end? Are you going to take 4 or 5 pieces at a time? And are you going to waste it? Or are you going to slow down and seriously enjoy each day and each moment as it happens? Because that's what gratitude is. I have a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade when spring comes back with rustling shade and apple blossoms fill the air. I have a rendezvous with death when spring brings back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land, and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death on some scarred slope of battered hill, when spring comes round again this year, and the first meadow flowers appear. God knows 'twere better to be deep, pillowed in silk and scented down where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed awakenings are dear. but I've a rendezvous with death. At midnight in some flaming town when spring trips north again this year. And I to my pledged word am true. I shall not fail that rendezvous. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learn too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. And you, my father there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage
against the dying of the light.
Rage against the dying of the light. Now, the book I mentioned earlier in this film wasn't actually intended to be a book. It was and is essentially a collection of journal entries written by Marcus Aurelius. And he was the so-called last good Roman emperor. And if you ever read Meditations, a phrase you'll read over and over again is this. Now, this is where I said Drake comes into the equation, right? Because Jake, I'm not sure how old you were when the word YOLO became a part of popular culture, but I remember I was in about year 8 or year 9, and it was just like, yeah, it was something you would say if you didn't do your homework, or you were just going to do something stupid. Oh yeah, YOLO, right. Now keep this in mind, okay? Because at the beginning of the film I said what ties a soldier who died in World War One, Dylan Thomas, the last good Roman emperor, and Drake together. And that's what this chapter is all about. So keep this in mind. Your time in this universe is fixed, and you only live once. That's what YOLO stands for. And the first poem I read at the beginning of this film is called I Have a Rendezvous with Death, written by Alan Seeger. And he was an American soldier who died fighting in the French Foreign Legion at the Battle of the Somme during the First World War. And I thought it was just a really nice poetic twist to add on top of the other 2 points. Right, your time in this universe is fixed. You only live it once, and you have a rendezvous with death. Right, there is a finish point, right? And if you read the poem, what Alan Seeger is essentially saying is that he is accepting his fate. It sounds very, very morbid, but he is saying that he knows that at some point in the future, it will end. And I hope for everyone watching this that it doesn't end in such a tragic and horrible way as it did for most men in the First World War. But the principle is still the same. You do have a rendezvous with death. And this is kind of the frame of this chapter. The perspective that you should always, well, not always, but you should try your best to keep in mind is that you have a rendezvous with death. Your time in this universe is fixed, and you only live it once. So what do we do with this information? Well, that's why I read the second poem. The second poem is written by fellow Swansea mucker, Dylan Thomas. And the name of the poem is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And the phrase which he repeats over and over again at the end of every sonnet. Is it a sonnet? I don't know. Every verse, you could say, is do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Now, you can take that quote literally for a fucking mad night out. Or you can take it metaphorically for what we just discussed. Right? What Dylan Thomas is essentially saying in this poem is, don't go gently through life. Right? Don't waste life. Rage against the dying of the light. Now you can take this any way that you want to, right? Rage against the dying of the light. But the way that I propose is to live your life in every single way to the highest possible standard you can. Right? To rage against the dying of the light. In between now and your rendezvous with death, do not go gently. And the reason I said this is seemingly paradoxical to the first chapter, or the first lesson, whatever you want to call it, is that the first one, gratitude, is all about slowing down and processing life as it happens to you and being there. And this chapter is all about you don't have forever. Okay? You don't have forever. Your time is fixed. You have a rendezvous with death, and you only live the time in between now and then once. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do in between now and that moment? The moment where you don't get a second chance. The moment where you can't go back and do things differently. You can't change anymore. The clock is done. You're at the 0 hour. What matters is what you do in between now and then. And I propose that you live your life in between now and then in a way which does not leave you with, which leaves you with as little regret as possible in that final moment, at the rendezvous, when you can look back with pride, with happiness, with content and gratitude for all that you have done, with the gift of life that you had. Face your rendezvous with death with your eyes wide open and rage against the dying of the light. When is the best time to plant an oak tree? 800 years ago? When is the second best time to plant an oak tree? Today. Do you get it? If there is something you need/want to do it today. You want to message that girl, or you want to talk to your partner about something. Do it today. Maybe you want to start working on your fitness, lifting weights or running or eating clean and not eating sugar. Start today. Maybe you want to start a new habit like meditating or waking up early or reading or something creative like photography or a new instrument or drawing. Start today. Maybe you don't like your job. Maybe you don't like your job and you want to do something different with your life. Start looking today. Time is limited. Time is passing. Don't put it off. Don't wish you'd done it 800 years ago. Do it today. No doubt in your life you've heard the expression, the 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. This proverb is taken from an ancient Chinese text called the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu nearly 2,500 years ago in Chinese. And the reason I bring this up is because there's another interpretation of this quote that was written 2,500 years ago in Chinese. And the other interpretation is this: the 1,000-mile journey begins beneath your feet. Do you get it? The journey, whatever that is, the journey starts when you start the journey. It starts when you choose to start it. And if you've grown up in the West, you've probably spent a lot of your life thinking of or being told how to live your life. But here's a question for you. Here's the most valuable question to you. Not how, but when. When do you live your life? When do you start? When you get the job? When you finish uni? When do you start? Plant the oak tree today. Take the single step today. Make today and every single day you have count. Make them count. And don't forget to enjoy the journey as it is happening.